it is the Bookatarian here for another video. Today I will finally be doing my book talk for Magic Steps. So, for those of you who do not know what this book is about, and you haven't left, this is the spoilery-free section of the video before I jump into all of my spoilery thoughts. This book starts off with just Sandry in perspective, because the other three and their mentor mages have all taken off to proceed with traveling to gain more experience as mages and basically just see how people in other parts of the world live and learn magic. Not since they left, it's only been about maybe a year-ish, or at the very least a few months since they left, but we have a little bit of a gap, so the kids are all now 14. And Sandry, like I said, is on her own. She even moved to the Duke's castle because her uncle, the Duke, had a heart attack. One day, on a ride with her uncle, after he's been feeling better for a few weeks now, he goes out to Summersea, his city, and basically just goes to lead an investigation of a most recent murder that happened among a notable family of, I guess, crime. I suppose there's supposed to be some kind of mafia background in this family that fell victim to mass slaughter. And Sandry is excused from going to investigate this at first, and she stumbles upon Pasco, who is a member of a family that has been consistently members of this police force, or police force wives, basically. They either, like, the wives happen to have served a little bit until they started having children, which is not really great for feminism, saying that you have to give up your job to grow your family. So Sandry meets Pasco, and he apparently earlier that morning did a favor for a friend of his who his family are fishermen, this friend, and he wanted Pasco to do a little dance to wish their nets basically good luck. Because there have been rumors that whenever Pasco does a dance, good things tend to happen. And she recognized that magic was being used when he was dancing. And so she introduces herself and asks him if he is aware that he is using magic. He says, "No, I'm not a mage. I can't have anything to do with magic. I'm supposed to become a police officer." And the plot kind of follows from that moment on. If you have not read this book, please go away and come back once you have read it, unless of course you want to be spoiled, then that's fine. Do whatever you want, ignore me, but you don't have a right to come at me at the comments if you disregard my warning. Once we start off, we see that Sandry is obviously living with the Duke, and she is very much hovering a lot over him. Her and the Duke's one of his under nobles that basically is kind of his secretary has kind of moved into a position where he can lessen the workload off the Duke while he's still recovering from his heart attack. And so they're both equally, like, very nitpicky at everything the Duke does, making sure he doesn't move too fast. But of course, the Duke has been stuck inside for like a month, at least, recovering and restricted to his bed. So he is going a little stir crazy, and they eventually concede to let him to go on this ride to investigate the murders of the Rocotte family. I'm getting the idea that they're supposed to be kind of this world's version of Middle Eastern descent. It just hits a little too close to reality. I kind of don't like when people of ethnicity are depicted as, evil or doing things or just being stereotypical, because I just immediately think of, like, Al-Qaeda and terrorist bands like that. I don't really like seeing them compared in that way, although it's this family that the first part of the Rocotte family that have been murdered in this book weren't exactly tied to the Rocotte Mafia aspects of it, but it's the side of the family that reported the crime who is more heavily notorious for being mafia involved. And so this Rocotte guy who is reported the crime is all about getting justice for his family and making sure that his family stays safe. And there's some very heavy themes as to, like, why should the police try so hard to protect this family when they have been involved in some pretty not great stuff with a rival kind of mafia family. Like everyone's murdering each other and doing horrible things to these mafia groups, and innocents do sometimes get involved and harmed as well. I just really like that this book, the heavy topic was that how police can often kind of sometimes let their idealism get in the way of doing their job. And granted, it doesn't last very long in this book. It's maybe like a few days after the initial murder took place. And then they're like, well, no, they should all be allowed to be protected, and we need to catch this murderer in case he doesn't stop at the Rocotte family and starts trying to kill other people as well, because they don't know if it's just straight up rival mafia family that the main Rocotte guy who reported the murder assumed it was his rivals. And especially after we hear that the remaining family, the remaining family, like their parents and maybe distant cousins who were still living in the country that they came from, had all been murdered as well, probably even before the initial murder that kicked off the plot of the book had been murdered. And so it was immediately seen as so much more of a problem, as this crime has now spread through different countries. Now that I've officially babbled on and on for several minutes, so Sandry does eventually meet back up with the Duke after she's met Posco and kind of sees the outskirts of the crime scene, and she just goes to walk right into the crime scene, and some of the guards are like, "Hey, lady, you can't do that. This is no place for a noblewoman." And she's just like, "Excuse me, I am not just a noblewoman. I am a mage, and I have every right to go and investigate this because," and I quote, "magic has been involved in this." She sees something that's kind of like how magic looks, but is also not. And it's kind of hard to describe, but it's basically confirmed as an anti-magic. And so she realizes that because magic is so heavily involved, she should likely report back to Winding Circle to tell them of what's happened. And of course, the Duke sends his police to officially give a more detailed report as well to the higher ups, but Sandry just goes right to Lark because she also has questions about Posco and what she should do about that. And so Lark then informs her of this rule that because she found Posco and in Lark's given knowledge doesn't know of a mage that would be anywhere nearby close enough to teach Posco how to handle his magic properly before it starts spilling out because he's using it in the wrong way. And so it could eventually kind of burn him out, like we saw with Yurin in Dasha's book, who burned himself out because he was using his magic so much improperly. We don't want that to happen to Posco, as because he could potentially harm more people than just himself when he does this. Sandry is just trying to wrap her head around how is she going to reach him, let alone how is she going to get him on board with, yes, he does have magic, and he needs to take the initiative and responsibility to make sure he is handling himself properly so people don't get hurt. And this point kind of drives home Posco has kind of been avoiding her. He does meet up with Sandry at the docks towards the end of this first day to check up on the fishermen's nets, and lo and behold, the fishermen had a really, really good haul, and of course that is attributed to Posco's little luck dance that he did earlier in the morning. And so Sandry was like, "Hey, see, I told you you had magic. You need to learn how to use it." And he was semi kind of on the same page with her at that point, as he had undeniable proof that he had done something, let alone what it was. He didn't exactly know. But he was very concerned because his family, like I said earlier, is very specific as to where they go. They are all, for the most part, aiming to become City Watch people. That is it. They are usually all discouraged from going into any other direction, except for he has an uncle who is basically the magical version of CSI, which when I read about that, I couldn't help picturing him as Barry Allen from The Flash. Doesn't matter what he was described to look like. It was just, nope, that's Barry Allen now. If you go into that specific magical direction, but Pasco couldn't see how his dancing magic could really be applied to that, so he was just better to shirk it altogether and not bother with this magic thing. I'm still going to be a City Watch person, and I can't do both. So Sandry seeing the problem as his family's kind of societal beliefs, I guess, or overall beliefs affecting him, she decides to go and talk to his parents to try and work something out where they can maybe be making an exception for Pasco because the situation is so different from just a normal member of his family. And so she goes to check up on him, kind of unannounced. She doesn't tell Pasco she's on the way to come see him. And the next morning he is training with, his cousins, and one of his cousin is a bigger bully among the lot of them, and goes and basically attacks Pasco when his mom, their instructor, is away somewhere else. And Pasco reacts kind of defensively, does a little jig, and ends up floating four of his cousins, the bully included, and getting them stuck in the air by like 10 feet or something. That whole scene where Sandry is just like so smug, and she immediately makes a circle around them both, talking him through how he danced that specific jig and how they could possibly kind of reverse it. And they eventually go to the conclusion that because he leaped up, he needs to like leap downwards, which I had a very hard time picturing that. I kind of, I think the first time I read it, I imagined basically him getting up onto a chair and just like jumping down. And so they did all eventually get down. Thankfully, no one was hurt. But this was kind of the final straw of both Pasco realizing that he can't get away from this and his family eventually coming around to accepting that he just cannot do what the rest of their family has up to this point done. And so Sandry just starts with the basics to teach him how to meditate. And Lark eventually informs her about this really, really renowned dancer that she knew from her acrobat days. And the dancer is retired now and teaches dancing, pretty much. And so Lark thought that since Sandra doesn't know that much about dance, that she should probably tag team with this dancer lady to basically work together as far as finding some kind of routine to help Pasco figure out his magic, pretty much. And so she does this, and I really enjoy all the scenes with the dancer lady. And when Sandry told Pasco that she had gotten him a dance teacher and that he was going to learn his magic, learn how to control his magic and use it by learning to dance as well. And he got so excited about that, and that really brought me over to his side. I was kind of iffy up until this point. I just thought he was I don't know, a blah character, but his passion for dance literally turned him immediately into like a Billy Elliot. He's Billy Elliot now. He's the magic Billy Elliot. And so I love that about him now. And so we follow along Sandry learning new ways to teach Pasco as far as meditating goes and him dancing. And she also has kind of got a hand in solving this mystery because of the magic involvement. And another thing that I really enjoy about the second quartet that I want to go more into detail about is that we actually see from the villain's perspective. We get to see from these two members of this rival clan that the Rocots immediately suspected was behind the murder, but they're basically like trained assassins that came from the rival clan. I don't remember what their name is. They somehow got a hold of the mage who was also involved in the pirate attack on Summersea like several years ago. He was behind the damage to the wards that were noted as possibly caused by the earthquake, but it wasn't 100% for sure that it was caused by the earthquake, so the anti-magic that he this mage had used to take down the wards were kind of just covered up by that. And he eventually got freed from the pirates only to land in the hands of these two people who were working together to basically assassinate the entirety of the Rockhot family, and that is their only mission in life. The only thing that is driving them is that. But he is just so desperate to get this dragon salt that they're bribing him with that he does anything and everything without question. He doesn't care. He is so far gone at this point that he just is looking to get his next fix. And I honestly feel so bad for this mage because we don't exactly see or get a confirmation of how old this mage is. And also, he's kind of without arms and legs. He doesn't have any arms or legs. He's just a body, a neck, and a head, which I should have mentioned earlier. So, anytime the baddies are doing something, the guy has him literally strapped to his back and carries him like a backpack, which I just found overly insulting. But, how else was he gonna move around? Ugh, gosh. It was just so many things go into this version of the villain, and so we get to see from the villain's perspective, and we get to kind of see foreshadowing for each and every step in their plan before we see the aftermath of said plan. And oh my gosh, I really liked this change of how everything plays out. It was just a nice thing to see rather than the kids' perspective all the time. And so yeah, basically that eventually leads to the ending results of the books where Sandry has figured out how to kind of work together with Posco, using both of their magics to weave a trap, a net type thing to sort of catch catch the villains basically, because they still don't know who is behind it at this point. They eventually go to spring the trap. Of course, Posco doesn't listen to Sandry and goes back and gets himself into a hostage situation, which, was kind of unfortunate, but it worked out in the end, so it doesn't matter. And we get a confirmation on this villain's mage who is hooked on the dragon salt, and he's maybe a few years older than Sandry, but he looks like a middle-aged, possibly older than that man because of what the dragon salt has been doing to him. And he eventually gets to burn himself out on this anti-magic and is hopefully like found some peace because he really does deserve to be laid to rest after all he was forced to do. And so, yeah, we get to see Sandry's character development more as young adult, kind of taking on adult responsibilities, but we also get to see how much she misses her friends. She misses them all very much. And she misses Little Bear because apparently Triss brought Little Bear with them when Nico and Triss went off to wherever it was they went. So it was really just her and Lark just kind of hanging out. Kind of made me tear up a little bit every time she thought a lot about their connection, how they're all so far away that she can't even really mind speak with them anymore because the distance, it's just not realistic. And so it just made me yearn to go into book 2 like immediately after I finished book 1. Of course, I waited because the whole month restriction thing that I'm doing. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I think it was better than the first book of the first quartet because we are already very familiar with the world and the magic system and the way it works, but we still found new things to expand upon as well. Like the world just keeps growing bigger and bigger the more books you get into this world. So it's just, yep, it was a very solid start to this quartet, and I don't really have very much else to say about this. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in my next video soon. Bye.